An old folk tale told across many cultures speaks of a man, his son, and a donkey. One morning, the father and son walked beside the animal together. People passing by laughed. "What foolish people! They have a donkey and still walk." So the father climbed onto the donkey. Later, another group frowned at the scene. What kind of father rides comfortably while his son walks behind him? Embarrassed, the father stepped down. The son climbed onto the donkey instead. But soon, more criticism arrived. What an ungrateful child, letting his old father walk alone. Ashamed again, both father and son rode the donkey together. Then another crowd reacted with disgust. That poor animal. They are both too heavy. By now, the father and son no longer trusted themselves. Every voice around them became more important than their own judgment. So in desperation, they tied the donkey to a pole and carried it on their shoulders. The crowd burst into laughter, and in some versions of the story, the donkey eventually slipped away entirely, lost. Not because the father and son were cruel, but because they abandoned their own center, trying to satisfy every passing opinion, and quietly, many people still live this way today, not with a donkey, but with their identity, their voice, their boundaries, their peace. Little by little, they reshape themselves for every room, every reaction, every disappointed expression, until one day, they can no longer recognize what is truly theirs anymore. In Buddhism, there is a powerful idea called tanha. Tanha is often translated as craving, but not just craving for money or pleasure. It also means the deep emotional thirst to be approved, to be wanted, to feel emotionally safe through other people's acceptance. The Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, whose teachings shaped millions of lives across centuries, warned that craving creates suffering, not because desire itself is evil, but because the mind becomes chained to what it cannot fully control. And approval is one of the most dangerous addictions, because unlike food or drink, you can never get enough. Someone praises you today. Tomorrow you fear losing that praise. Someone accepts you now. Suddenly, you become terrified of disappointing them. So your personality starts shifting from truth to strategy. You stop asking, "What do I actually feel?" and start asking, "What response keeps everyone comfortable?" That is the trap. A people pleaser often looks kind from the outside, but inside, they are exhausted because their nervous system is constantly scanning for danger. A delayed text, a colder tone, a small facial expression, one awkward silence during dinner, and the mind immediately whispers, "They're upset with me. I did something wrong. I need to fix this." This is why people-pleasing feels endless, because the goal is impossible. Human beings contradict each other constantly. One person calls you selfish for protecting your time. Another calls you weak for having no boundaries. One boss says, "Speak up more." Another says, "You talk too much." The target keeps moving, just like the father and son with the donkey. And eventually, you become emotionally homeless, accepted everywhere, but at home nowhere inside yourself. There is another important idea in modern Buddhist teaching. It is called idiot compassion. This term became widely known through Buddhist teachers who warned against confusing wisdom with self-sacrifice. Idiot compassion happens when kindness loses clarity, when helping others starts destroying you, when saying yes becomes a way to avoid guilt, or conflict, or rejection. This is where many people get trapped, because they believe boundaries are cruel. They think exhaustion proves love. They think self-erasure means goodness. But real compassion was never meant to require self-destruction. Imagine this. Your phone vibrates late at night. A coworker asks for another favor. Your body already feels heavy. Your eyes burn. You barely rested yesterday. But before you even think, you type, "Sure, happy to help." Not because you truly want to, but because you fear the discomfort of disappointing someone. That is not freedom. That is fear wearing a polite face. Buddhist wisdom teaches something important. Compassion without wisdom creates suffering for everyone involved, because eventually, resentment appears, burnout appears, quiet anger appears, and the kindness becomes poisoned. A tree cannot give shade if its roots are dying, and a human being cannot give genuine love while constantly abandoning themselves. Real compassion sometimes says, no. Not with hatred, not with aggression, but with honesty, with steadiness, with self-respect. And strangely, that honesty often creates healthier relationships than endless compliance ever could. Because people may enjoy unlimited access to you, but deep down, they trust consistency more than performance. Freedom does not begin when everyone approves of you. Freedom begins when disapproval no longer controls you. And this shift starts quietly, usually in very small moments. The next time someone asks for something, pause before answering. Not dramatically, just long enough to hear your real reaction underneath the fear. Notice the body. Does your stomach tighten? Do your shoulders tense? Does your breathing suddenly change? Many people pleasers answer too quickly because silence feels dangerous. But silence is where honesty returns. Another practice is learning to disappoint people gently. Not cruelly, not coldly, just truthfully. You can say, "I can't do that tonight. I need rest. I don't have the capacity right now." Short, clear, without a 10-minute apology afterward. At first, this may feel terrifying, because Tanha hates uncertainty. It wants reassurance, instant emotional safety. But every time you survive disapproval, your mind slowly learns something new. Rejection is uncomfortable, but it is not fatal. And over time, your identity stops depending on constant external approval. Another powerful practice is noticing where your kindness becomes performance. Pay attention to moments where you say yes, while secretly hoping someone will finally validate your worth. That awareness matters deeply, because true kindness is freely given. It is not a transaction for love. And perhaps the hardest practice of all, sit quietly sometimes without trying to impress anyone. No performance, no fixing, no image management, just breathing, just existing. Many people discover something shocking there. Underneath all the pleasing, there is actually a human being who is exhausted from pretending. And that person does not need harsher self-judgment. They need permission to finally be real. People-pleasing is not just emotional, it becomes physical. You can feel it in the body. Harriet B. Breaker, an American psychologist who studied people-pleasing behavior, described this pattern deeply in her work, The Disease to Please. She explained that chronic people-pleasers often build their emotional safety around external approval. Their self-worth becomes dependent on keeping others happy, and when approval feels threatened, the body reacts almost like danger is present. Stress hormones begin rising. Cortisol, the hormone connected to stress and survival alertness, starts preparing the body for emotional threat. Not because someone attacked you physically, but because the nervous system interprets rejection as a risk to belonging. This is why people-pleasing feels so intense. The body is not simply chasing compliments, it is trying to avoid emotional exile. And that fear can quietly control an entire life. Until a person finally realizes, constant approval cannot create inner peace, because peace built on other people's reactions will always remain unstable. The old story about the donkey was never really about public opinion. It was about identity, about what happens when human beings abandon themselves, trying to become acceptable to everyone else. And maybe that is the real exhaustion so many people feel today. Not too much work, not too many responsibilities, but too much pretending, too much shaping yourself around the comfort of others. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to become selfish. It asks you to stop disappearing, to stop treating your own soul like the price of belonging, because a life built entirely on pleasing others eventually becomes a life that nobody truly knows, not even you. If this video spoke to something you have quietly carried for years, let it be the beginning of a different relationship with yourself. Not a harder one, not a more perfect one, just a more honest one. And if someone in your life is exhausted from always trying to keep everyone happy, share this video with them. Sometimes one moment of clarity can interrupt years of silent self-abandonment. Subscribe to Effortless Focus for more reflections where Eastern wisdom meets modern life. And until next time, protect your peace before you sacrifice yourself trying to protect everyone else.